Coming up next on the Commissioner's Report, we're going to take a look at the city of Bartow. Now, of course, Bartow is the county seat, but there's much more to learn and discover about this city. Commissioner Melony Bell will be here for that journey. And we're going to take a look at the county and the role of governance. Term limits, non-term limits. Some commissions have 5, some have 7 members. How does that all come about? Well, governance is important. Commissioner George Lindsey will be here for that civics lesson. It's all straight ahead on this edition of the Commissioner's Report. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Commissioner's Report. I'm Mike Moore. I appreciate you joining us today. And with me here is the chairman of the Polk County Commission, Commissioner George Lindsey. Commissioner, it's always good to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mike.
You were busy. You ran in from a meeting before we even had this taping, so you're always hopping.
It was busy.
The topic we want to talk about may on the surface not sound that exciting. We're talking about governance. And you may think, well, I don't want to talk about that. But this is important. Tell us why.
Well, it is important to understand how your local government works. I remember back a long time ago in elementary school, we had Florida history. But I don't know there's ever been a structured orientation or presentation about local governance, and the relationship between the citizens and the government that runs the day-to-day operations that adds the quality of life to what we do. So I thought it might be worthwhile to kind of hit the highlights of how Polk County runs and the relationship with the cities. As you know, that Florida became a state in 1845, and just a few years later, Polk County was created in 1861. We were actually carved out of what is now Hillsborough County.
Right.
We were the eastern half of Hillsborough County, and counties are creatures of the state. The state has certain responsibilities, and they delegate that responsibility to the counties, requiring them to have a law enforcement, to have a court system, have a method of collecting taxes, a method of assessing taxes, and a method of running local elections. And then for the day-to-day operations, the Board of County Commissioners fills that role. So the first ones I mentioned are effectively, that's why we call them constitutional officers. Right. That they have their areas of responsibility, which are again are agents of the state to act in that behalf. Municipalities came on the scene sometime later as settlements and communities began to grow or coalesce around typically a water body or a railroad or some other natural feature, a lake. Lakeland, Bartow, and so on.
Right.
And the citizens in those communities decided that they wanted a little higher level of service than a broader county could provide in those early days, those early years. And so they elected to tax themselves, create an identity, define a boundary, create a local government for the cities in the form of a city commission or city council, and that's how it has evolved over time and with various modifications. It has stood the test of time, and local government is the one closest to the people. I run into folks in Publix all the time, in the church and around the county in the daily business life, inquiring about one thing or another, but we don't have very opportunity to run into our president or our Congress or our senators. So
very unlikely.
Very unlikely. So. It is closest to the people and the ones that put out the fires and pick up the garbage and do those things that make the community.
Well, it's interesting when you think about that. The fact that you are very likely that you could have a conversation with the county commissioner. You can do that easily. But it's important to understand what you can and can't do, what you should do and what you're not. Because people sometimes, I know, come up to you and think you have all sorts of amazing powers, and my son's in prison, can you pardon him? I mean, who knows what they're saying, but they don't understand really the scope of what you are supposed to do as the commissioner.
Well, there is a defined line of responsibility. The elected officials at the city and the county level are the policymakers. They set the policy They set the levels of service that they provide to the community, to set the taxes and the fees to support that. But whether it's a county manager, or a city manager, or a town manager, they're the ones that are the day-to-day hands-on operators. They're the CEOs that makes things happen. Elected officials are effectively prohibited from making those kind of day-to-day directions. I can't call the fire chief and tell him to go buy a new fire truck, or somebody go build a road in front of my house, or whatever. We're isolated, and that's an appropriate division of responsibilities. Set the policy, set the goals of the county, and then be held accountable for that, and then hire someone, a professional, to run the day-to-day operation. So all of our commissioners have day-to-day contact with constituents that have issues with a building permit, or their kid didn't get enough time on the Little League field, or whatever. But those things are then passed down through the administrator to address. And but sometimes we can cut through the red tape, and more often than not, the constituent calls for their commissioner and expects some response. And we have a very responsive board, and it's then a matter of simply putting the players together. If it's a code issue, a code violation, or a building permit issue, it's simply a matter of putting them in touch with the right people to expedite the process. It's really not much more difficult than that.
All right, well, let's take a look maybe at some of the examples I know of, and it's interesting, the state of Florida has 67 counties. I think you were telling me earlier they started off with 2.
That's right.
We've grown just a little bit since those early days.
Yes, there were initially just 2 counties right along the Panhandle, and basically that's how Tallahassee became the state capital. It was equidistant between Jacksonville and Pensacola.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, it's not exactly equal distance anymore for anybody else, but that's probably too late to change that. But 67 counties, it's interesting, they may be the same in the fact that you mentioned those 5 constitutionals, the sheriff, the clerk of the court, those 5, they're same there, and they have commissioners. But after that, they're able to determine whether they have a 5-commission board or a 7-commission board, and partisan, nonpartisan, and that's all kind of individual by county. Is that correct?
That's correct. If a county is not a charter county, which means the citizens have elected to give the county commission more discretion, then there will be 5 commissioners in those non-charter counties. Once a decision is made to go to a charter county, which Polk County did, I think in '88 or '89, then you have a lot more discretion. There's a little more taxing authority, a little more responsibility. Then you can have partisan or nonpartisan. In fact, I served on the Charter Review Commission in 01, and we put on the ballot that those constitutional officers, the sheriff, tax collector, property appraiser, and so on, would be nonpartisan. Prior to that, they were. And the theory being at that time was they're not policymakers, they're administrators, they have a defined area of responsibility and little discretion as to how they manage those jobs. And so those were made nonpartisan. Subsequently, I think, other counties have followed suit.
Now, you look at Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, they have 7 commissioners. Again, that's because their charter is deemed that they're large enough and they want to have those. Polk County has 5 commissioners. You mentioned the charter review, and I think that's something that's worth talking about because you said if you're a charter county. The charter review meets every, is it 9 years?
8
years, okay.
Yes. Every 8 years, the county commissioners, each commissioner appoints 2, the chairman gets 3, and the constitutionals collectively, I think, get 2, whatever that takes to get 13. And they meet every 8 years to discuss those kind of things we just talked about. At one time, there was consideration of making the constitutional officers department heads, as opposed to independently elected officials. And the charter allows that consideration. It would have to be put on the ballot for the citizens to vote on that. And some counties have done that. It just gives more local control.
And what's important is they are not deciding. These are recommendations of what would go on the ballot. Then the citizens vote and decide.
That's correct. I think in '01 we had 6 or 8 initiatives on the ballot, and 4 or 5 of them did pass, and a few didn't. I was on the Charter Review Commission again in '09, And we really, after a year of deliberation, they said, really, there's nothing broke that needs fixing. And so the only things we put on the ballot then were just clean up administrative kind of things. But we'll be doing this again, 17, 18?
Yeah, it's coming up, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And in fact, one thing I'd like to recommend is we don't do it every 8 years, maybe do it every 14 or something. The time needs to be a little longer in between.
Well, one of the things that I don't know if it was just the most recent one is that where they had put on the ballot and the citizens approved term limits for the commissioners. Or it was
term limits. That was a citizen initiative.
Okay.
That the charter allows for citizen initiative. Without a charter, citizens do not have the power to put anything on the ballot. Group of citizens put it on the ballot to have term limits, and that passed. So the county commissioners are now limited to 2 4-year terms. We know there are 5 county commissioners. We are required to live in a district, but we run countywide, referred to as at-large.
right.
And each district has, as close as possible, the same number of voters in each district, population. But the geography is very different because of density. For example, my District 1, very compact. It's basically Lakeland and West Lakeland, a little bit south toward Mulberry. Commissioner Bell, who's coming on after this,
Yeah.
Her district is entirely the south half of the county because there's less population. But we represent the same number of people. In fact, we represent all the same people because we both represent the entire county.
I heard someone say if all those orange trees and cattle could vote, her district would be really, really powerful. But it's the size, it's just based on population, not the area.
Correct.
And again, it's important for people to know this because the charter review, like you said, coming up in a couple of years, may or may not be putting something before the citizens to vote on. So people really need to pay attention because if you don't like term limits, then that was your opportunity to vote against that, or vice versa.
Sure. Yes. And we will be needing engaged folks to serve on that commission. As we approach that, we'll let it be known those willing to serve to make submit their resumes for consideration for the board to choose from them, which kind of diverts to another subject that we have a lot of boards and committees that we depend on citizen participation.
Right.
And everything from the Planning Commission to code enforcement and a whole variety of sidewalks and whole kind of things. And we rely heavily on the advice of citizen committees and citizen volunteers.
You know, I was thinking about the sidewalk committee because that was one of the first things we talked about at the beginning of the year. A new committee, where in terms of not new, but where citizens were more involved, and how you were doing that. And it's funny, people think if I can't get involved or I'm not involved. There are so many opportunities where you're almost begging for people to be involved. And again, whether it's the charter review situation or all these different committees, citizen involvement. I know, especially with you, that's very important, isn't it?
It is. We can't be everywhere. We can't know all the nuances that folks are dealing with, and it's important to get a broad spectrum of input as we make policies and set fees and have expectations of our community.
We're almost out of time, but I know you kind of alluded to this, but you actually were on that charter review the last time before you obviously became a commissioner. Do you think that helped you in terms of maybe having a better understanding of what the commissioners do?
Certainly it did, and it was very enlightening. We had 1 year's worth of public hearings. We had several hearings scattered around the county, not only here in the county commission chambers, but it was very important and very engaged a lot of citizens.
Well, Commissioner George Lindsey, he's the chairman of the Polk County Commission, and he's involved in all these different areas, and he wants you to be involved as well. And if you saw this book on the table, this big book's all about the moon. I'm reading about the moon, but there's a chapter in there. If we're going to settle the moon, we need to have governance and how there's. So if it's important on the moon, it's important here in Polk County as well. Commissioner, thank you for being here. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, Commissioner Melony Bell will be here. We're going to continue our tour of her big district. Today, we're going to take a look at the city of Bartow. We'll be right back after this.
May I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
This job looks perfect. It says you need a high school diploma. You got one of those, right?
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
I got that.
Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
And welcome back to the Commissioner's Report. With me now is Commissioner Melony Bell. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
And we're going to continue our tour of District 2. We have visited Frostproof, your hometown, Fort Meade, Mulberry, and now we didn't have to go very far to talk about Bartow. The mayor of Bartow is here, Mayor Adrian Jackson. AJ, I see on your shirt. Mayor Jackson, thank you for
Adrian
being...
Jackson got shortened to AJ by a lot of people. So if my mom were still here, she'd be calling me Adrian, but
Yes.
most everybody, it's AJ.
Well, there's a lot we want to talk about. Again, the importance of the county seat. Every county has to have one city that's the county seat, and it's Bartow in this case. And so that certainly makes that relationship between the county and the city a little more unique and important, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And Polk County is lucky to be here in Bartow, the way I look at it, because we have such great partnerships with the city of Bartow. And like you talk about, sense of community is what we have here.
Yeah, well, you know what? I had a chance recently to visit Bartow. I didn't have to go very far. As I mentioned, we're right here in the city, which is the county seat. But I discovered in my very quick tour that Bartow is more than just the city that's the county seat. It's also a community with deep roots, long history, and a sense that everyone belongs. It doesn't get any more exciting than a Friday night at Bartow Memorial Stadium. At Bartow, fans in the stands isn't dependent upon success on the field.
You go to a baseball game, it's packed. It's just the way the Bartow folks support athletics and support the school, support Bartow High School.
It's a connection that runs throughout Bartow for many generations.
A lot of multiple generations do live here. I'm the fourth generation in my family to live here, and one of our three children lives in Bartow.
And the common thread for so many, Bartow High School.
As we called it in 1958, Summerlin Institute. Jacob Summerlin was a wealthy cattleman during the Civil War, and although he didn't live in Bartow all that long, he obviously took a liking to the place.
He donated 120 acres of land to Polk County to establish a county seat, land to build a courthouse, a school, and 2 churches. When this building was built, there was an outcry of the citizens saying, "We'll never outgrow this building."
The old Polk County Courthouse, now known as the History Center, housed all of county government.
In 1926, there were 2 wings added to the building to give an opportunity for expansion. We still grew and grew.
A real treasure to Polk County. The building has been restored, extensively restored, both inside and outside, and is now used, as you well know, as a Polk County History Center.
S.L. Frisbee is such a great friend of ours. He serves on the Polk County Historical Commission, the Polk County Historical Association, and he also is a historian.
His own history has deep roots in the family newspaper business.
The Polk County Democrat was started by my grandfather and my great-grandfather in 1928 and was passed down through the years to my father and his brother Richard, my father Loyal, and then to me.
When SL's children weren't interested in continuing the paper, it was sold, ending a family tradition that lasted 75 years through 4 generations. But through the years, the family business isn't the only thing SL has seen change.
When I was a child, the entire merchant community was on Main Street and just within a block off of Main Street. Companies have dug all the ore out of the ground in Polk County and have moved to the south. Citrus and cattle are both now competing with development interests for use of the property. And so now the biggest industry in Bartow is county government. Chances are very good if you walk down the street or go out to dinner, you will find not one but several people who you know, and in all likelihood people you've known all your life. And I've heard time and again people say, you know, there's something about Bartow that gets in your blood.
Even though there are a number of new homes being built on the north side of Bartow, SL says he isn't anticipating major changes.
I've often heard people say that, say critically, oh, people in Bartow don't want to grow. And my response to that is no, people in Bartow don't want to see Bartow change. And so more people, yes. Losing that cultural friendliness, no.
Well, again, it's kind of, I appreciate Murtis Young kind of giving us some time there in the museum, and S.L. Frisbee, really an amazing person, again, with those deep roots. And similar to yours, Mayor, you told me you're a fourth generation.
Right, my great-grandparents on both sides of my family were Bartowans. My grandparents, my parents, born and raised in Bartow, high school sweethearts, the whole story. And of course, I left for a number of years after high school, but had always thought I might return to Bartow, so I did 18, 19 years ago. I've been back home.
And you are in serving now as the mayor. You've been on the commission since 2007.
2007, right. I'm in my 9th year, 3rd term, and serving as mayor for 1 year.
And Commissioner, I know your hometown is Fort Meade, but there are a lot of similarities in terms of the deep roots in these communities. That really is important, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I have also roots here. We had a lot of family that grew up here. In fact, my husband's mother was from Bartow, graduated from Summerlin High School, and was very involved here in Bartow.
There's a number of things, we'll run out of time before we have time to get to all these, about the partnerships and the relationship between the city. But I want to mention something that, a few months ago now, there's the big contention. You were the only dissenter in a 4-to-1 vote about, I think, the supervisor of elections office that was going to move over into Auburndale. And as I was talking to you before we started, people may think, oh, Bartow and the county are now at odds with each other. I liked what you said, what you're going to use, how this is a point to grow from. Tell me about that again.
Well, I think that whole evolution, if you will, I mean, number one, it caught some people by surprise, this whole move. So there was a lot of discussion, pro and con, but from that discussion, I think we realized the urgency and the sense of need to always communicate with each other, the county and the city. I mean, we are the host city, and we appreciate the county's presence here, but it just illustrated the fact that we in the city don't really know all the intentions or needs of the county government, and as long as we have lines of communication, we want to be here to help provide solutions and alternatives and just be proactive in helping the county. I mean, as we all know, Polk County has grown exponentially. We're reaching to all corners of the county. I understand the need for satellite offices for customer service in certain agencies and so forth, but we are the county seat. We're proud of that. We always want to be the county seat, and whatever we can do to facilitate the county's presence here, we're all for it. And we have many examples of how we've worked well with the county on the various issues.
Well, I want to talk about some of those, because I also want to mention something too, and we'll do that in just a second, about some recognition. Shows your involvement here in the city of Bartow. But when you think of the partnerships, there's a lot we could talk about, but obviously we were talking about the water treatment plant. That's a good chance where that kind of can benefit the county and vice versa. Explain to me why that's so important.
Well, our plant out on Sheffield Road was failing, and it would have taken millions of dollars to upgrade. And we knew that Bartow was building one, so we did a collaboration with them, partnership, to be able to send our wastewater to their plant. So not only did it help the city of Bartow in that partnership, but it helped our taxpayers out in the unincorporated area.
Yeah, and again, those are examples, and I know there are several of the city and the county working together that makes so much sense for everybody.
And just to amplify Commissioner Bell, I mean, the big win was for the taxpayer.
Right.
I mean, we saved them in excess of a $25 million capital outlay simply by entering into a long-term agreement, a 25-year agreement to process wastewater. We had the capacity to do it. I'm glad to do it. It also helps us financially. I mean, obviously we don't do it for free. There is a service cost attached to that, but it does help the taxpayer save capital expenditures. And
and when you're saving taxpayer dollars, that's really that's one of the more important things that you can do.
That's why AJ and I are here in this seat that we sit in, as mayor and the county commissioner.
Commissioner, the city of Bartow, as I mentioned, automatically gets the top spot, and I don't mean that maybe in the wrong way, but because they're the county seat. You may not be the biggest city in the county, but you are certainly one of the more important ones. Not that the others aren't. I'm not trying to get any of that. But when you think about Bartow and their role, and they've been this county seat for a long, long time. There were some people I saw, we were talking about this, read in the blogs, oh, the county seat is going to move. That is absolutely crazy. And the county seat's not going anywhere, is it?
No, it's staying here in Bartow.
Okay, just want to make sure people thought, in case something that we're going to, it's not going to happen. That's kind of crazy talk. I want to change directions just a little bit because I want to mention something that I was reading that just recently. You received an award about your involvement. I'm going to get the name right. It's the annual C.C. Corbett Diversity Award. And you were one of a couple people that were receiving awards for your involvement and volunteering here in the Bartow community.
Yes.
How exciting is that?
Well, I think it all spun out from the partnership that the county has with Gordonville Heights and Gordonville community, and me helping them with their street lights, paving, parks, and all. And yes, I was very honored to receive that award. I had no idea, and when I got there and saw my family there, I figured something was up. So. But yeah, and for the City of Bartow and the Chamber of Commerce to identify diversity and to work together in this community, it says volumes.
Yeah. As we saw in that story, and we're hearing from you and your family as well, many generations here. There was another, just recently, you honored another woman, and I'm not going to pronounce her name correctly, but Mary Regowig, who had been here.
Felony Mary, absolutely.
And now you've actually named a part of one of the streets after her.
We have Regowig Way, right outside the county administration offices. She served for 60 plus years in the state attorney's office. Again,
that's amazing right there.
Bartow family, and it was only appropriate that we recognize her for her contributions in a lasting way. So we don't name streets very often, or rename streets.
Or rename streets, right.
But we certainly did in this case.
Yeah, I've never had a street named after me, but
well, that was very deserving of.
Yeah, that was certainly, wow, that's when you think about 60 years of service. She's 90 years old. Wow, that's amazing. That's
retired once but came back.
Yeah.
So we were very proud of Mary.
Commissioner, the importance again of the county working with the cities, and like I said, some people may have seen this blip, if you will, on the radar screen of maybe some contention, but again, it just reminds us, like you were saying, that we have to work together. And it's actually, you stood up for what you thought was right for this area and your district.
And still standing up, and I will continue. But what come out of this, as the mayor said, the communication. We're going to start having maybe bi-quarterly meetings. The mayor, myself, the city manager of Bartow, Chamber of Commerce, and also constitutional officers sit down and look out, maybe 10 years, 15 years. How's your office growing? What are you going to need? So that we can plan that to make sure that all the offices stay here. Their main offices stay here in the county seat.
Something I was hoping we were going to talk about. We're running out of time rapidly, but I've got to mention the History Center. The History Center, the original courthouse. I can't believe that one building at one time housed everybody. That's hard to believe nowadays. But that really is an important piece of history that is now preserving our history for all of Polk County.
All of Polk County, all 17 municipalities. If you take a visit there, you can see some little a piece of history of where you're from.
Yeah, and then I know that's got to be one of the jewels here in Bartow, the History Center.
Well, it really is a jewel, and we're so proud of that. And of course, as a young boy growing up here, I did go into that building when it was the sole courthouse, and I remember going through the building, and we're just glad that building has been preserved as our logo and our trademark.
Yes.
We are so proud of that historic building, and we're so glad that it's found new life and a new purpose as a history center. And I think visitors to Bartow really need to take advantage of the many exhibits that they rotate through there. They're doing a great job with the History Center, and we're very proud of it.
Well, the time goes by very quickly, and there's much more we could talk about. But again, that sense of community in Bartow, which you see in throughout Polk County, but so prevalent here, very important. And I have to say, as we're taping, coming up this Friday, this will be way past time you watch this, but Bartow and Fort Meade are playing each other in football, so a little contention maybe coming up this Friday night. But anyway, Commissioner, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
You're welcome.
And Mayor, thank you. I appreciate you joining us today here in the downtown Bartow community. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you for joining us. We appreciate you joining us every time for another edition of the Commissioner's Report, where we take a look at the issues and the people in the communities here in Polk County. Until next time, Take care.